I want to share something powerful with you today. For 30 days I committed myself to one simple, yet profound practice. I spoke in tongues every single day. At first, I thought it would just be a ritual, a daily habit to check off my spiritual list. But what happened next was beyond anything I could have imagined. When you begin to pray in tongues, you are not just uttering unknown words. You are tapping into a realm where the Spirit intercedes on your behalf. Your natural mind cannot understand, but your spirit hears the whispers of God. And when you commit to it consistently, even for just a month, your faith begins to expand in ways you never expected. I noticed that after just a few days, my spirit began to awaken. There was a peace, a calmness that no circumstance could disturb. I realized that the battles I had been facing weren't just physical or emotional. They were spiritual. And speaking in tongues opened a new dimension of strength. It was like my soul was being lifted above the noise of life. The next surprise came in my decision-making. Situations that once left me anxious or uncertain began to clarify. Doors that seemed permanently closed started opening. It was as if my spirit was tuned into the heart of God, receiving guidance that my mind could never calculate. Every choice I faced became infused with a wisdom that was supernatural beyond logic. But it didn't stop there. Speaking in tongues daily began to break the chains that had held me for years. Habits, fears, and doubts that seemed impossible to overcome. Strongholds began to crumble. I felt liberation not just in spirit but in mind and body. The unseen battles in the spiritual realm were being won even as I prayed silently in the spirit. I also noticed my prayers becoming more powerful. I would pray in faith, and things that once took months to manifest began happening in weeks. Promises that seemed distant started arriving. It wasn't magic. It was the Spirit of God aligning my spirit with His perfect will. Every word uttered in tongues became a seed of transformation, planted deep in the soil of my spirit, ready to bear fruit. By the end of 30 days, I was not the same person who had started this journey. My mind was renewed, my heart was full of peace, my spirit was vibrant, and my life was moving in a direction I had only dreamed of. The most amazing part, it didn't stop at day 30. This practice became a lifelong source of power, a continual river of spiritual strength that keeps flowing. Friends, I share this with you because God wants to do the same in your life. The moment you choose to speak in tongues consistently, you invite His Spirit to move freely. You are not just praying. You are partnering with the Creator to bring heaven into your life. The results may surprise you, but they will also transform you. Remember, the Spirit of God is faithful. He will never leave you empty-handed. He will give you breakthroughs, peace, and wisdom beyond your comprehension. All you need to do is commit, speak, and allow Him to work wonders. 30 days is just the beginning. Heaven is waiting for those who dare to trust, to pray, and to speak in the Spirit. There is a power that flows when you enter into daily communion with God. A power that the human mind cannot fully comprehend, but the Spirit recognizes immediately. When you commit yourself to consistent prayer, especially in tongues, you are opening a channel directly to the heart of the Father. It is not just a practice or a habit. It is a deliberate choice to engage with the divine, to let the Spirit move freely within your life. Each time you pray in tongues, you are connecting with the source of all wisdom, all strength, and all grace. It is like stepping into a current that carries you beyond the limits of your understanding, beyond the limitations of your natural abilities, and into a place where the supernatural becomes natural. The beauty of praying in tongues daily is that it transcends human language. There are no restrictions, no boundaries, no need to explain yourself or find the perfect words. The Spirit intercedes directly, translating what you cannot express into a language that moves the heart of God. Every syllable uttered is not meaningless. It is alive with spiritual energy, alive with divine intention. Over time, this consistent communication builds a spiritual intimacy that is unmatched by any other form of prayer. The more you engage in this daily communion, the more sensitive your spirit becomes to God's presence, the more attuned your heart is to His whispers. Daily prayer in tongues begins to create a rhythm in your life, a sacred cadence that the Spirit uses to shape your character. It is like lifting weights for the soul. Each session strengthens your spiritual muscles. Over days and weeks, your connection to God grows more natural, more effortless. You begin to experience a depth of fellowship that cannot be achieved through casual or occasional prayer. The Spirit reveals things to you that your natural mind might have missed. Situations in your life start to take on new clarity. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now carry a sense of divine guidance. The more consistently you pray, the more your life becomes aligned with the purposes of God. When you commit to daily tongues, it is also a demonstration of faith. Faith is not only believing but acting, and by speaking in tongues each day, you are acting on the truth that God is present, that His Spirit dwells within you, and that He is actively working in your life. This faith is built quietly, moment by moment, word by word, as you submit yourself to the Spirit's leading. Even when life feels dry, even when circumstances seem unchanged, the act of daily prayer strengthens your spiritual foundation. You are training your soul to rely not on the visible, not on the immediate, but on the eternal and unseen. Consistency in this spiritual discipline also begins to produce a flow of revelation and insight. When you pray in tongues, you are not only speaking to God, but also allowing Him to speak to you. It is a two-way communication that grows richer and more profound with every day you commit. Spiritual truths, solutions to long-standing challenges, and encouragement for your soul start to emerge. The Spirit may reveal perspectives about your life, your relationships, and your purpose that are completely unexpected, yet perfectly timely. This consistent communion does not just give you answers. It transforms the way you see life, teaching you to trust God more deeply and to rely on His wisdom rather than your own understanding. Another profound effect of daily tongues prayer is the strengthening of your resilience. Life is filled with trials, pressures, and moments when despair threatens to take hold. But when your spirit has been trained to dwell in God's presence daily, these trials lose their power. You find a reservoir of strength that cannot be exhausted, a peace that no circumstance can shake. Speaking in tongues becomes a spiritual lifeline, a way to release burdens and draw supernatural strength. The Spirit works within you, renewing your energy, calming your mind, and fortifying your faith. Over time, this consistent practice produces not only spiritual strength, but emotional and mental stability as well, because your foundation is firmly anchored in the eternal. Moreover, daily communion in tongues fosters a life of obedience and sensitivity to God's will. As you consistently yield to the Spirit, your heart becomes more receptive to His guidance. Small promptings become unmistakable directions, opportunities to serve, moments to encourage others, and insights into God's purposes for your life begin to flow naturally. It is as though your spirit has been tuned to the frequency of heaven, able to discern the subtle movements of God that many overlook. This sensitivity develops gradually, but its impact is profound. You begin to live not by sight, not by circumstance, but by the Spirit, walking in alignment with God's design for your life. Daily tongues prayer also builds spiritual authority. There is a power in persistent, devoted prayer that establishes your position in the unseen realm. Strongholds that once seemed immovable begin to weaken. Patterns of sin, fear, and limitation that have plagued you for years start to break. Your prayers carry weight in the spiritual realm because you have cultivated consistency, devotion, and intimacy with God. Each day you speak in tongues, you are asserting spiritual authority over every challenge and opposition in your life, not by your strength, but by the power of the Spirit working through you. Finally, the greatest gift of daily communion is transformation. It is not only about the results you see or the problems that get resolved. It is about who you become in the process. Consistent tongues prayer molds your character, fills your spirit with joy, and shapes your perspective to reflect the heart of God. Your inner life begins to radiate outward, affecting relationships, decisions, and even your environment. You become a vessel through which the Spirit can work freely, bringing hope, peace, and supernatural influence into every area of your life. What begins as a simple daily discipline becomes a lifestyle, a continual fellowship with God that transforms every aspect of your existence. When you commit to speaking in tongues every day, you are choosing a path of intimacy, empowerment, and divine alignment. The more faithfully you engage, the deeper your connection becomes. It is not about how long you pray or how perfectly you articulate the words. It is about consistency, faithfulness, and yielding to the Spirit. Through this daily communion, your spirit is strengthened, your faith is expanded, and your life is positioned for breakthroughs beyond your imagination. The power of daily tongues prayer is not just in what it accomplishes, but in what it transforms you into a person fully aligned with the Spirit, fully sensitive to God's will, and fully empowered to live a victorious life in every area. Faith is often spoken of as a simple belief, a confident expectation in what is hoped for. But there is a deeper layer of faith that is hidden, a faith that goes beyond the limits of natural understanding. It is a faith that cannot be cultivated by reasoning, study, or human effort alone. This faith is activated in the Spirit through a direct encounter with God. And one of the most powerful ways to unlock it is through speaking in tongues. When you pray in tongues, you are not only communicating with God, but also stirring a dormant faith that lies deep within your spirit, a faith that surpasses the comprehension of the natural mind. Many people rely solely on visible evidence, on what can be seen, touched, or logically understood. But the supernatural realm operates differently. It requires a faith that is unseen yet powerful enough to shape reality. Speaking in tongues is a bridge between the natural and the supernatural. As you yield your vocal expression to the Spirit, your spirit begins to trust God in ways that your mind cannot process. Words flow that may not make sense to your conscious understanding, but every utterance is infused with spiritual energy that awakens faith. This faith is not theoretical, it is experiential. You begin to sense that God is working in ways that cannot yet be observed, yet you believe because the Spirit Himself testifies within you. The moment you commit to speaking in tongues, you step into a realm where limitations of intellect and circumstance no longer dictate your belief. You may face impossible situations, overwhelming challenges, or delays that seem endless. Yet, as your spirit prays in the language of the Spirit, faith rises. It is a faith that says, I cannot see it with my eyes, I cannot calculate it with my mind, but I trust the one who holds all things together. This faith is not dependent on understanding. It is dependent on relationship with the Spirit who intercedes for you. Every syllable spoken in tongues becomes a seed planted in the soil of your spirit, and each seed germinates into a confidence that God will act, even before evidence appears. This hidden faith also has the power to renew hope and strengthen perseverance. Life often tests patience, and delays can lead to doubt. Yet, when you engage in tongues prayer, you begin to experience a supernatural assurance that transcends time. You may not yet see the manifestation of God's promises, but your spirit begins to rejoice in anticipation. Your faith is stirred because the Spirit is at work within you, preparing circumstances, orchestrating events, and aligning hearts. This hidden faith allows you to move forward boldly, take risks in obedience, and stand firm in trials, knowing that the unseen hand of God is at work. The activation of hidden faith through tongues is not limited to endurance in difficult times. It also empowers boldness in action. Many believers hesitate to step into God's calling because they cannot see a clear path. They doubt their ability, their resources, or the timing. But faith stirred in the Spirit does not rely on sight. It moves forward, guided by the Spirit, trusting that God will provide open doors and direct steps. Speaking in tongues daily creates an internal environment where doubt diminishes and bold, confident faith grows. You begin to act according to what God has promised rather than according to what seems possible in the natural. This faith becomes a guiding force, shaping decisions and inspiring courageous action. There is also a mysterious aspect of speaking in tongues that unlocks insight into God's purposes. As your spirit communicates directly with the Spirit, you start to perceive the plans and intentions of God in ways that logic cannot uncover. Hidden faith arises as you realize that God is always at work, even when the natural circumstances appear stagnant. The Spirit reveals patterns, prompts understanding, and brings clarity to situations that seemed confusing. This is faith awakening in the hidden recesses of your spirit, a faith that trusts the unseen and anticipates the impossible. You begin to sense that miracles are not exceptions, but possibilities available to those who walk in alignment with the Spirit. Another profound dimension of hidden faith activated through tongues is its transformative effect on your mindset. The more consistently you pray in tongues, the more your spirit dominates your natural reasoning. You begin to think less according to fear, doubt, and limitation, and more according to divine potential and supernatural truth. Your faith becomes your lens, allowing you to view circumstances not as obstacles, but as opportunities for God's glory to be revealed. This shift in perspective is subtle at first, but it grows steadily, shaping your reactions, your expectations, and your interactions. Speaking in tongues daily becomes the engine that drives a mindset of unwavering belief, even when the external world suggests otherwise. Hidden faith also creates a spiritual authority in your life. As your spirit intercedes through tongues, you are participating in a divine partnership. You are no longer merely requesting from God, but joining with Him in spiritual action. The faith activated within you has power to influence outcomes, resist temptation, and claim God's promises. This faith operates beyond natural understanding because it is not limited by what you can see or comprehend. It works directly with the Spirit who knows all things. Over time, you will notice that your prayers carry greater weight, that your declarations become more effective, and that your life begins to shift in alignment with God's will. Finally, the activation of hidden faith through tongues leads to a life of expectancy. Expectancy is the hallmark of those who walk in the Spirit. It is the quiet confidence that God is not only present, but actively moving in every situation. This faith does not panic when circumstances change, nor does it waver when plans are delayed. Instead, it rests in the assurance that God is faithful. Speaking in tongues cultivates this expectation because your spirit is being exercised daily, strengthened in trust, and aligned with God's purposes. Every utterance of tongues is like a signal flare to heaven, a spiritual declaration that your heart is fully engaged with the unseen, and that you trust God to accomplish what you cannot yet see. When you commit to this practice, hidden faith becomes tangible in your life. You notice changes in your response to challenges, in your ability to wait with patience, in your courage to step into new opportunities. Life takes on a new rhythm because your spirit is no longer passive, but actively participating in God's work. You begin to live in a space where miracles are expected, where the impossible becomes possible, and where your natural understanding is continually expanded by the Spirit. Speaking in tongues daily unlocks this hidden faith, revealing the profound truth that God is always at work, and that those who trust Him in the Spirit will never lack the strength, wisdom, or courage to fulfill His purposes. In essence, speaking in tongues is a spiritual key. It opens doors to faith that cannot be unlocked by study, effort, or intellect alone. It awakens a belief that trusts the unseen, acts on God's promises, and moves boldly in obedience. This hidden faith transforms ordinary believers into extraordinary vessels, ready to accomplish what the world deems impossible. Each day you commit to praying in tongues, you are nurturing this faith, cultivating it in the soil of your spirit, and allowing it to grow into a force that shapes your life, your decisions, and your destiny. It is not simply an act of prayer. It is a supernatural activation of trust, confidence, and authority, all rooted in the Spirit of God. There is a unique power that flows into the life of a believer who commits to speaking in tongues daily. It is a power that cannot be measured by natural strength, cannot be acquired through study, and cannot be obtained by sheer willpower. It is a divine energy that refreshes the spirit, revitalizes the soul, and empowers the entire being. Each time you pray in tongues, the Spirit of God flows through you, renewing every fiber of your inner being. This is not merely emotional relief or temporary comfort. It is a deep, supernatural strength that sustains you even in the midst of the most demanding circumstances. Daily communion in the Spirit through tongues becomes a fountain of energy that no adversity can deplete. The human spirit can grow weary. Life brings pressures, stress, and battles that often leave the mind tired, the heart heavy, and the body drained. Yet when you consistently engage in tongues prayer, your spirit is refreshed in ways that are beyond natural comprehension. As you yield to the Spirit, the unseen realm begins to work actively within you. The Holy Spirit moves, rejuvenating your inner man, igniting hope, and restoring the energy that life's challenges attempt to consume. This is why daily tongues is more than a habit. It is a vital source of spiritual vitality that carries you through both ordinary and extraordinary circumstances. When you pray in tongues regularly, you tap into the supernatural energy that God provides to His children. This energy does not merely alleviate fatigue. It strengthens you to endure trials, face obstacles, and walk boldly in obedience. You begin to experience a capacity for life that far exceeds what your natural strength could sustain. Tasks that once drained you become manageable. Challenges that seemed insurmountable begin to yield under the pressure of divine power. This energy is not visible to the human eye, yet it transforms your inner life, giving your soul the resilience to persevere and the vigor to accomplish God's purposes. Daily tongues prayer also rejuvenates your mind and emotions. It is a spiritual reset that calms anxiety, dissipates fear, and clears confusion. The moment your spirit engages in the language of the Spirit, a release occurs, burdens are lifted, tensions are eased, and your heart is filled with peace. This peace is not passive, it is empowering. It strengthens your resolve, sharpens your focus, and renews your courage to face the challenges of life. Over time, the consistent practice of tongues transforms your emotional landscape, creating a stable and resilient inner world that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. The process of renewal through tongues is both subtle and profound. At first, you may notice a gentle lift in your spirit, a quiet reassurance that you are not alone in your struggles. As you continue daily, the impact becomes more evident. Your spirit feels lighter, your mind clearer, and your energy restored. Even when the body is tired, the spirit sustains you. This supernatural energy flows because you are participating in the divine rhythm of prayer, joining with the Spirit to release power into your own life and the world around you. It is a continual infusion of strength, a spiritual fuel that keeps burning even when the fires of life threaten to extinguish natural energy. Another remarkable aspect of daily tongues is its capacity to renew faith. Faith and strength are intertwined. The more your spirit is renewed, the stronger your faith becomes. When you consistently pray in tongues, your confidence in God's power grows. You begin to trust that He will sustain you, provide for you, and guide you through every challenge. This faith, nurtured in the Spirit, creates a foundation of strength that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Even when natural resources are scarce, when human help fails, or when obstacles seem impossible, the spiritual energy derived from daily tongues carries you forward. The renewal of the Spirit through tongues also equips you to minister more effectively. When your inner being is refreshed, your ability to serve others is strengthened. You are no longer limited by exhaustion, discouragement, or weariness. Your prayers become more powerful, your counsel more insightful, and your presence more encouraging. The supernatural energy you receive daily is not only for your own benefit, it is a source of blessing for those around you. You become a channel through which God's strength and vitality flow into the lives of others. This is why daily tongues is not just a personal discipline. It is a spiritual investment that amplifies your impact in every area of life. Consistent tongues prayer also strengthens perseverance in ways that cannot be achieved naturally. Life is filled with seasons that test endurance, long waits, repeated challenges, and unexpected hardships. Without spiritual renewal, these seasons can lead to despair, frustration, or burnout. However, daily tongues replenishes the spirit and infuses supernatural energy, enabling you to endure and overcome. Each session of prayer builds spiritual stamina, creating a reservoir of strength that you can draw upon when circumstances become demanding. This persistent renewal equips you to maintain focus, sustain hope, and press forward toward God's purposes even when the journey is long and the path uncertain. Spiritual renewal through tongues also has a purifying effect. As the Spirit flows through you in this intimate communion, negative thoughts, lingering doubts, and emotional fatigue are replaced with vitality and clarity. Your mind becomes sharper, your heart lighter, and your spirit more receptive to God's guidance. This purification is not a one-time event. It is a continual process that occurs each day as you yield to the Spirit. The cumulative effect is profound: a life increasingly aligned with God's purposes, a spirit increasingly vibrant and energized, and a soul increasingly free from the weariness of the world. Moreover, the energy you receive through daily tongues prayer is not limited by age, health, or circumstances. Even when the body grows tired or the mind feels weak, the spirit is renewed in a supernatural way. This energy sustains, empowers, and invigorates, creating a strength that is not dependent on natural ability but on divine provision. You are able to face each day with courage, clarity, and confidence, knowing that the Spirit is equipping you to fulfill every calling, every task, and every purpose. The cumulative effect of this daily spiritual renewal is transformative. Your life begins to reflect a vibrancy and vitality that cannot be explained by natural means. You carry an inner strength that is visible to others, a resilience that inspires, and an energy that sustains you in every season. Daily tongues prayer becomes more than a discipline. It becomes a lifestyle of empowerment, a constant source of supernatural energy that refreshes your spirit, strengthens your faith, and equips you to live victoriously. In essence, speaking in tongues daily is like drinking from a river of divine life. Each utterance replenishes, strengthens, and energizes your spirit. You are renewed in ways the natural world cannot offer. You are empowered to endure, to act, to serve, and to triumph. This daily renewal becomes the foundation of a spiritually vibrant life, one where God's strength flows freely through you, touching every aspect of your being and radiating outward into the world. Life is filled with decisions, both small and monumental. Every day, we are faced with choices that can shape our future, determine our destiny, and impact the lives of those around us. Some decisions seem simple, yet their long-term consequences are profound. Others feel overwhelming, leaving the mind restless and the heart uncertain. It is in these moments that the need for divine guidance becomes most pressing. Human wisdom alone is often insufficient. We can gather facts, analyze situations, and weigh options, but without the Spirit's insight, we risk missteps, delays, or missed opportunities. This is where the power of praying in tongues comes into play, offering a supernatural avenue through which God reveals His wisdom and directs our steps. When you commit to speaking in tongues, you enter into a direct dialogue with the Spirit. This is not a casual practice, it is a conscious act of yielding your understanding and submitting your will to God. The Spirit begins to intercede for you in ways that transcend your natural comprehension. The words you speak, though unknown to your mind, are full of spiritual significance. Each utterance carries a divine weight, a hidden alignment with God's purposes. As you pray consistently, your spirit becomes more sensitive to His leading, and you begin to perceive subtle promptings and insights that would otherwise remain hidden. This is the foundation of divine guidance, an intimate partnership between your spirit and God's Spirit. Praying in tongues daily sharpens your discernment. In the natural realm, decisions are often clouded by emotions, biases, or incomplete information. But the Spirit provides clarity that goes beyond what the human mind can calculate. You begin to sense which path to take, which opportunities to pursue, and which risks to avoid. This guidance is not always loud or dramatic. Often, it comes as a quiet assurance, a deep sense of peace about a particular choice, or an inner conviction that resonates within your spirit. The more you practice tongues prayer, the more attuned you become to these divine signals, allowing you to navigate life with confidence and wisdom. One of the remarkable aspects of praying in tongues is its ability to unlock revelation. Revelation is not merely knowledge, it is understanding infused with divine insight. It is when the Spirit illuminates your mind and heart, showing you what could never be discovered through human effort alone. When you encounter complex decisions, challenges that seem insurmountable, or crossroads where the right path is unclear, daily tongues prayer opens doors to revelation. Your spirit begins to see connections, possibilities, and solutions that were invisible to your natural senses. This revelation is timely, precise, and tailored to your circumstances because it comes directly from the source of all wisdom. The guidance received through tongues also builds confidence and removes fear in decision-making. Fear often paralyzes action, leaving people stuck in indecision or second-guessing themselves. When you pray in tongues, your spirit is strengthened and a supernatural assurance emerges. You begin to trust that the Spirit of God is interceding on your behalf, aligning circumstances, and orchestrating outcomes according to His perfect will. This faith-filled confidence empowers you to act decisively, knowing that your steps are ordered by a divine hand. Over time, decisions that once seemed intimidating or overwhelming become opportunities for obedience and growth. Another dimension of divine guidance through tongues is timing. Many people struggle not only with what decision to make, but also with when to act. The Spirit moves with perfect timing, and consistent tongues prayer aligns your spirit with His schedule. You begin to recognize seasons of waiting, moments of preparation, and the precise timing for action. This discernment prevents missteps, reduces unnecessary frustration, and positions you to maximize the impact of every choice. Speaking in tongues daily is like tuning your inner spiritual compass to the frequency of heaven, ensuring that you are in sync with God's perfect plan. Praying in tongues also cultivates creativity and innovation in decision-making. Often we approach choices with a limited perspective, relying only on conventional methods or known solutions. But the Spirit operates beyond limitations. When your spirit communicates in tongues, it opens pathways for divine inspiration. You begin to think in ways that transcend natural logic, discovering solutions that are both innovative and aligned with God's purposes. Businesses, ministries, relationships, and personal goals benefit from this supernatural insight. Your decisions become guided not only by understanding but also by revelation, creativity, and divine strategy. Daily tongues prayer also fosters humility and dependence on God, which are essential for receiving divine guidance. The more you engage in this practice, the more you recognize that your understanding alone is insufficient. You learn to surrender your preferences, assumptions, and preconceived notions, allowing the Spirit to lead. This surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is a recognition that true wisdom originates from God. In yielding, you open the door for Him to speak clearly, direct, decisively, and reveal solutions that surpass your imagination. The practice of daily tongues builds a habit of dependence that transforms decision-making from guesswork into divine alignment. Consistent tongues prayer also has a cumulative effect on your overall life direction. Each time you pray, your spirit is being trained to recognize God's voice, respond to His guidance, and act in accordance with His will. Over weeks and months, This practice develops a heightened sensitivity to the Spirit. Decisions become more natural, more aligned with your purpose, and more effective in producing lasting impact. You no longer approach life reactively. You act with divine insight, purpose, and authority. This ongoing communion ensures that your steps are ordered, your goals are guided, and your life is continually positioned for success according to God's plan. Divine guidance through tongues is also relational. It not only impacts personal decisions, but also strengthens your ability to influence and lead others. When your own life is aligned with the Spirit, your counsel, mentoring, and leadership are imbued with clarity and wisdom. You can guide others with confidence, offering solutions that are inspired and aligned with heaven. This influence extends to families, workplaces, ministries, and communities, creating a ripple effect of divine insight and strategic decision-making. Finally, the true beauty of daily tongues prayer is that it creates a lifestyle of reliance and intimacy with God. Decision-making becomes less about anxiety, guesswork, or fear, and more about partnership with the Spirit. You begin to experience the joy of walking in alignment with God's will, witnessing the unfolding of His purposes in your life. Each decision made under the guidance of the Spirit confirms His faithfulness, strengthens your trust, and deepens your relationship with Him. The doors that open, the solutions revealed, and the clarity received are not random. They are the result of consistent, Spirit-led communion that transforms ordinary choices into divine appointments. Praying in tongues daily unlocks access to a wisdom that cannot be attained naturally. It bridges the gap between the seen and the unseen, the human and the divine. Every decision, whether personal, professional, or spiritual, is strengthened by the guidance of the Spirit. Life becomes a journey marked by clarity, purpose, and supernatural insight, as your spirit learns to navigate complexity with divine precision. In this way, tongues is not just a prayer language. It is a key that unlocks doors to revelation, empowers faith-filled action, and ensures that your steps are guided by the wisdom of heaven. Life is full of challenges that are not merely physical or emotional, but deeply spiritual. Many of the struggles we face, persistent fears, recurring failures, habits we cannot break, and situations that seem impossible, are rooted in strongholds that have taken hold in our lives. These strongholds are not visible to the eye, and they cannot be fully overcome by human effort alone. They are spiritual barriers entrenched in the unseen that block our growth, limit our potential, and hinder our relationship with God. Yet there is a supernatural way to confront and dismantle these strongholds, and that is through the consistent practice of praying in tongues. Regular tongues prayer becomes a weapon of spiritual warfare, a powerful tool that weakens and ultimately destroys the barriers set against you. When you pray in tongues, your spirit is speaking directly to God in a language that carries authority and power beyond your natural comprehension. The enemy does not understand this language, yet it carries an impact in the spiritual realm. Each utterance becomes a strike against the foundations of bondage, chains, and oppression that have long held sway over your life. Over time, consistent tongues prayer begins to loosen the grip of fear, doubt, and discouragement. Patterns that seemed permanent start to break. Habits that once dominated your behavior lose their power. This is the essence of spiritual warfare. The unseen battle fought with a weapon that is both subtle and infinitely powerful, the language of the Spirit. Strongholds often operate through repeated thoughts, emotions, and actions that create cycles of defeat. Natural efforts to break free may provide temporary relief, but the underlying spiritual force remains intact. Speaking in tongues daily penetrates these hidden strongholds because it aligns your spirit with God's power and authority. The Spirit intercedes for you, bringing light to areas of darkness and power to areas of weakness. As you persist in this daily practice, the chains that once bound you begin to weaken, and you find yourself experiencing freedom in areas where previously you felt trapped. This freedom is not a one-time event. It is a progressive release that strengthens your spirit and transforms your life. The breaking of strongholds through tongues is also a process of empowerment. Each time you pray in the Spirit, you are activating God's power within you. Your spirit grows stronger, more resilient, and more equipped to resist the pressures and attacks of life. You are no longer subject to every circumstance or temptation. The spiritual energy released through tongues builds a protective force around your soul, shielding you from attacks and enabling you to live victoriously. The enemy recognizes the power of persistent tongues prayer and begins to lose ground, for he cannot stand against the Spirit that moves through your prayers. Another key aspect of breaking strongholds is the transformation of your mind. Many strongholds operate through false beliefs, limiting thoughts, and negative patterns of thinking. As you pray in tongues, your spirit is renewed and your mind begins to align with God's truth. Thoughts of fear, anxiety, and defeat are replaced with hope, confidence, and faith. The Spirit reprograms your understanding of yourself and your circumstances, dissolving the lies that once held you captive. Over time, this mental transformation reinforces the spiritual victory gained through tongues, creating a holistic freedom that encompasses spirit, soul, and mind. Regular tongues prayer also releases a sense of intimacy with God that is critical in overcoming strongholds. Many strongholds persist because we try to confront them in our own strength. Speaking in tongues daily shifts the focus from self-effort to spirit-led action. You begin to rely not on your own understanding or power, but on the authority of the Spirit interceding on your behalf. This intimacy with God builds confidence, strengthens your faith, and provides the wisdom necessary to navigate challenges. You begin to realize that the battles are not fought in isolation, but through a partnership with the divine, and that the Spirit within you is infinitely more powerful than any obstacle outside of you. Consistent tongues prayer also opens the door for the manifestation of miracles. Strongholds often feel immovable because they operate in areas where natural resources and solutions fail. Yet the Spirit moves supernaturally. As you pray in tongues, doors previously closed begin to open. Circumstances shift in your favor. Relationships are restored. Opportunities that were once hidden now become visible. This supernatural intervention is not coincidental. It is the direct result of your spirit engaging with God's power through persistent tongues prayer. Each utterance builds momentum, releasing divine authority that breaks down the barriers of the enemy. Breaking strongholds also requires patience and persistence, and tongues prayer nurtures both. Spiritual battles are rarely instantaneous. Some strongholds have existed for years or even generations, and they require consistent spiritual effort to overcome. Daily tongues develops endurance in the spirit. You learn to persevere even when change seems slow. Each day of faithful prayer strengthens your spiritual resolve, and each utterance chips away at the walls that have stood for so long. The cumulative effect is extraordinary. Gradually, what once seemed unbreakable crumbles under the weight of persistent spirit-led intercession. This practice also produces boldness and authority in your spiritual life. As you experience victories over strongholds through tongues, you gain confidence in your identity and authority as a child of God. You no longer approach spiritual battles timidly. You confront challenges with courage, knowing that the Spirit within you is more powerful than any stronghold outside of you. This authority is not based on arrogance but on experience, a lived reality of God's power at work through your consistent prayer. Each breakthrough reinforces your understanding that strongholds are defeated not by might, but by the Spirit who fights alongside you. Furthermore, regular tongues prayer produces a lasting freedom that extends into every area of life. Strongholds often manifest in patterns: emotional, mental, relational, and spiritual. When you engage in consistent tongues prayer, the power of the Spirit addresses these patterns at their roots. The liberation is comprehensive, touching every dimension of your being. You experience a freedom that cannot be replicated by temporary fixes or human effort. Over time, your life is transformed into a testimony of victory, demonstrating the supernatural impact of Spirit-led intercession. Finally, the practice of breaking strongholds through tongues cultivates a lifestyle of spiritual vigilance and empowerment. You become a person who is spiritually alert, sensitive to the movements of the Spirit, and ready to confront challenges with faith and authority. The consistent habit of tongues prayer trains your spirit to recognize strongholds, engage in spiritual warfare, and operate in divine strength. What begins as a daily practice becomes a permanent posture, a spiritual lifestyle that ensures continual victory over every barrier, chain, or obstacle that seeks to hinder your walk with God. In essence, daily tongues prayer is not merely a devotional act, it is a powerful instrument of liberation. It dissolves spiritual barriers, shatters the grip of long-standing strongholds, and infuses your life with supernatural authority and energy. Each utterance weakens the enemy's hold, strengthens your spirit, and aligns your life with God's power. As you commit to this practice consistently, you move from bondage to freedom, from limitation to victory, and from struggle to supernatural triumph. The strongholds that once seemed unmovable become powerless before the Spirit that flows through you, demonstrating that persistent, Spirit-led prayer is the key to spiritual breakthrough. God's promises are eternal, unchanging, and filled with life, yet they often remain dormant in the natural realm until our spirit is aligned to receive them. Many believers long for breakthroughs, yearning to see the fulfillment of God's word in their lives, yet struggle to experience the manifestation of what has already been promised. This is where the discipline of praying in tongues plays a transformative role. Daily engagement in the Spirit through tongues connects your inner being directly to God's promises, aligning your heart, mind, and soul with His will. It is in this alignment that the invisible becomes visible, the potential becomes reality, and the long-awaited breakthroughs begin to appear. When you pray in tongues, your spirit enters into a direct conversation with God that transcends human reasoning. The words may be unknown to your mind, yet they carry spiritual power that activates the promises written in His word. Each utterance is more than prayer. It is a spiritual key that opens doors to the fulfillment of God's covenant. As you persist, your spirit begins to resonate with the eternal truths of God's promises, creating an internal harmony between your faith and His divine will. This alignment is critical because breakthroughs do not occur merely by desire or effort. They require your spirit to be in sync with the Spirit of God, fully receptive to His timing, methods, and purposes. Praying in tongues daily cultivates faith in a unique way. Faith is the vehicle that transports God's promises from the realm of the unseen into your life. When you speak in tongues, you are exercising a form of faith that operates beyond understanding, a faith that activates what cannot yet be seen. The Spirit works in you, reinforcing your trust and increasing your expectancy. Over time, this consistent practice builds a deep confidence that God is faithful, that His promises are sure, and that every word He has spoken will come to pass in your life. This expectancy is a powerful force because it positions your spirit to receive, making you ready to embrace breakthroughs as they arrive. Daily tongues prayer also removes spiritual hindrances that block the manifestation of promises. There are often unseen barriers, fear, doubt, past disappointments, and spiritual opposition that delay God's intervention. As your spirit communes with the Spirit in tongues, these barriers are weakened. The intercession of the Spirit brings release, breakthrough, and restoration. Each utterance becomes a divine tool that dismantles opposition, clears obstacles, and aligns circumstances with God's will. In essence, your prayer is not just asking for fulfillment, it is preparing the soil of your life to receive the seeds of God's promises, ensuring that they bear fruit in their proper season. The process of alignment through tongues also increases spiritual sensitivity. As you pray consistently, your spirit becomes attuned to the subtle movements of God. You begin to recognize His hand in situations, perceive divine opportunities, and discern the steps necessary to bring His promises to reality. This sensitivity transforms your life because you are no longer navigating by sight or emotion but by Spirit-led guidance. Each breakthrough begins to feel less like luck and more like a natural outcome of your intimate connection with God, a visible manifestation of what has long been promised. Another profound effect of tongues prayer is the cultivation of patience and trust. Many believers struggle to see immediate results and become discouraged when promises do not appear on their timeline. Daily tongues prayer shifts the focus from the natural to the spiritual, from timing dictated by human expectation to divine orchestration. Your spirit learns to trust God's timing and rely on His perfect plan. Even when the external world seems unchanged, the Spirit is at work internally, preparing, positioning, and aligning circumstances so that the promises will manifest in fullness. This process strengthens endurance, deepens trust, and cultivates a persistent expectancy that ensures you remain in faith until the breakthrough arrives. Manifestation of God's promises also flows through consistency and perseverance. Spiritual alignment is not a one-time event, it is a daily, continual engagement with the Spirit. Each session of tongues prayer reinforces your connection to God's promises, builds spiritual momentum, and releases supernatural power into your life. Over time, this consistency produces exponential results. What may have once seemed impossible begins to shift. Situations that were stagnant start moving. Opportunities and solutions appear, relationships are restored, and long-standing prayers are answered. The cumulative effect of persistent tongues prayer is not only the fulfillment of promises, but a life increasingly marked by supernatural breakthroughs. Daily tongues prayer also deepens your intimacy with God, which is essential for the manifestation of His promises. The closer your spirit draws to Him, the more clearly His promises are revealed. Speaking in tongues is a form of intimate communion, a sacred dialogue where your spirit intercedes, worships, and connects directly with the heart of God. This intimacy strengthens your belief, aligns your desires with His will, and positions you to receive blessings that were previously beyond reach. As your connection grows, your faith becomes unshakable, your heart remains expectant, and the reality of God's promises begins to take shape in tangible ways. Moreover, tongues prayer produces alignment in every area of life: spiritual, emotional, relational, and material. God's promises touch all aspects of our existence, and the Spirit's work through tongues ensures holistic manifestation. Your relationships improve, your decisions are guided, your emotional state is stabilized, and your spirit is strengthened. This holistic alignment creates a fertile environment for breakthroughs, ensuring that the manifestation of God's promises is not partial or fragmented, but complete and life-transforming. The spiritual energy released in tongues prayer also multiplies faith-filled actions. As your spirit becomes aligned with God's promises, your behavior begins to reflect that alignment. You take steps of obedience, act on opportunities, and engage with life from a position of confidence and divine empowerment. This action, flowing naturally from spirit-led alignment, amplifies the manifestation of promises. God's power combines with your faith-filled response, creating a synergy that produces visible, tangible results. Finally, the culmination of daily tongues prayer is a life marked by continual breakthroughs. Each prayer aligns your spirit, activates faith, dismantles opposition, and releases supernatural energy that brings promises into reality. What begins as a spiritual discipline transforms into a lifestyle of expectancy, authority, and divine partnership. The Spirit's work in you becomes evident in every area of life, revealing that God's promises are not abstract concepts or distant hopes, but living realities waiting to be manifested through consistent spiritual communion. Through tongues, you experience a tangible, powerful, and ongoing connection with God that ensures the fulfillment of His word in your life. The human mind is a battlefield where thoughts, emotions, and beliefs collide. It is the place where doubt and fear often seek to dominate, where past failures and present anxieties attempt to dictate the course of life. Yet the mind is also the gateway to transformation, and it is here that the consistent practice of speaking in tongues can bring profound change. Continuous tongues prayer reshapes your mindset in ways that the natural world cannot replicate. It rewires your thinking, elevates your perspective, and positions your entire life to operate under the guidance and power of the Spirit. This transformation begins internally, in the recesses of the Spirit, and gradually permeates every aspect of your existence, producing peace, joy, and supernatural outcomes that flow naturally from a mind renewed by God. Speaking in tongues daily cultivates a deep sense of peace in the believer. The pressures of life, the worries that crowd the mind, and the uncertainty of the future often create tension and unrest. Yet as you yield to the Spirit in tongues, your inner being experiences a supernatural tranquility that surpasses understanding. This peace is not superficial or fleeting, it is a steady, enduring calm that anchors your soul in the midst of storms. It reshapes the way you respond to challenges. Instead of reacting with anxiety or fear, your mind begins to operate from a place of spiritual equilibrium, making decisions with clarity, confidence, and divine insight. Over time, this cultivated peace transforms your life because it affects your emotions, your relationships, and your ability to navigate difficult circumstances with grace and wisdom. Continuous tongues prayer also produces profound joy. Joy is more than a fleeting emotion. It is a spiritual state that arises from connection with God and alignment with His purposes. As you consistently pray in tongues, the Spirit floods your heart with a deep, abiding sense of delight and fulfillment. You begin to experience life differently, not as a series of burdens and struggles, but as a journey infused with purpose and divine presence. This joy fuels perseverance, strengthens faith, and inspires action. It changes the atmosphere around you. People notice the difference in your countenance, your attitude, and your interactions. What begins as an internal spiritual renewal manifests externally, touching every area of your life with the vitality and energy of the Spirit. One of the most remarkable aspects of continuous tongues prayer is its ability to realign your thought patterns. Negative thinking, self-doubt, and limiting beliefs are common strongholds in the mind. These patterns often dictate behaviors, influence decisions, and shape outcomes in ways that are detrimental to growth and success. As you speak in tongues consistently, your spirit begins to dominate your mind. Thoughts are filtered through the lens of the Spirit, and the lies that once held sway begin to lose power. Your perspective shifts from scarcity to abundance, from fear to faith, from confusion to clarity. This reshaping of the mind is gradual yet powerful, creating a foundation for lasting transformation in all areas of life. Continuous tongues prayer also cultivates spiritual sensitivity. As your spirit communicates directly with God, your awareness of His presence, guidance, and power increases. You begin to perceive subtle promptings, insights, and revelations that inform your decisions and actions. This heightened spiritual awareness transforms the way you interact with the world. You no longer rely solely on human reasoning or external circumstances to dictate your choices. Instead, your mind is guided by the Spirit, producing results that are not only effective but supernatural. The transformation of the mind through tongues allows you to navigate life with wisdom, discernment, and confidence that comes from divine alignment. The transformation extends to emotional stability as well. Life is unpredictable, filled with ups and downs that can easily disturb the mind and spirit. Yet, through continuous tongues prayer, your emotions become anchored in God's presence. Anxiety is replaced with calm, frustration with patience, and despair with hope. This emotional equilibrium reshapes your responses to challenges, allowing you to act with composure and faith rather than reaction and fear. Your relationships, work, and daily interactions benefit from this renewed emotional intelligence, which is rooted in spiritual alignment and sustained by consistent communion with the Spirit. Another profound outcome of continuous tongues prayer is the activation of supernatural results in your life. When your mind and spirit are aligned with God, your life begins to operate in harmony with His principles, and miracles start to manifest in natural ways. Opportunities arise at the right time. Solutions appear to complex problems, and doors open where previously there were barriers. This is the fruit of a transformed mind, a mind that thinks and operates under the influence of the Spirit, producing results that go beyond ordinary human expectation. The consistency of tongues prayer ensures that this transformation is not occasional but habitual, creating a lifestyle where supernatural outcomes become the norm rather than the exception. Continuous tongues prayer also reshapes your identity. The way you think about yourself, your purpose, and your potential is transformed as your mind is renewed. You begin to see yourself as God sees you, a victorious, empowered, and spiritually aligned individual. This renewed self-perception fuels confidence, ambition, and resilience. It liberates you from the limitations imposed by past failures, societal expectations, and self-imposed restrictions. Your life starts to reflect the reality of your true spiritual identity, and your actions align with the authority, promise, and destiny that God has placed within you. The cumulative effect of this transformation is profound. A mind reshaped by continuous tongues prayer leads to a life characterized by peace, joy, spiritual authority, and supernatural results. Your decisions are guided by wisdom, your actions empowered by the Spirit, and your spirit continually refreshed and aligned with God's purposes. Challenges are no longer obstacles but opportunities for faith, growth, and demonstration of God's power. Relationships, career, health, and personal growth all benefit from this inner renewal. The transformation of mind and life is holistic, affecting every facet of your existence in ways that are observable, tangible, and lasting. Finally, continuous tongues prayer fosters a mindset of expectation. When your spirit is consistently engaged with the Spirit through tongues, your mind develops a habit of anticipating God's movement. You begin to expect breakthroughs, anticipate provision, and trust in divine timing. This expectancy is a powerful driver of faith and action. You operate with confidence, knowing that the Spirit is at work within you and that your life is positioned for manifestation of God's promises. This mindset of anticipation ensures that you remain proactive, courageous, and aligned with God's purposes, allowing the transformation to ripple through every aspect of your life. In essence, continuous speaking in tongues is more than a spiritual discipline. It is a life-altering practice that transforms the mind, reshapes perspective, cultivates peace and joy, and produces supernatural results. It renews your spirit, aligns your thinking with God's truth, and empowers you to live a victorious, Spirit-led life. As your mind is transformed, so is your life, reflecting the fullness of God's presence, power, and promises in every area of your existence. Beloved, the journey of speaking in tongues is not just a practice. It is a spiritual revolution in your life. It strengthens your connection with God, unlocks hidden faith, renews your spirit, guides your decisions, breaks strongholds, aligns you with His promises, and transforms your very mind. Each day you commit to this discipline, you are not only praying, you are partnering with the Spirit to release supernatural power, authority, and breakthroughs into your life. Remember this, the unseen work in your spirit is far more powerful than what you can perceive with your natural eyes. The daily habit of praying in tongues is the key to living a life that transcends limitations, defies obstacles, and walks boldly in God's purpose. Your faith will rise beyond understanding, your spirit will be renewed beyond exhaustion, and your life will manifest the fullness of God's promises. Do not underestimate the power of persistence. One day, one utterance, one faithful moment may seem small, but consistent communion with the Spirit reshapes your destiny. Today, I challenge you to step fully into this supernatural practice. Speak in tongues with expectation, trust in God's timing, and allow the Spirit to lead you. What has been hidden, delayed, or impossible will begin to move. What has been weak will be strengthened. What has been dormant will rise in victory. Let your life be a testimony that consistent prayer in the Spirit is the pathway to divine alignment, miraculous breakthroughs, and unshakable faith. Your spirit is powerful, your God is faithful, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. Speak, declare, pray in tongues, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never imagined.